I got my best friend's boyfriend to break up with her. Am I a hater for that? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. My best friend is pretty much the girl every guy wants to be with, and every girl wants to be like. Her and I met in the 2nd grade, and we're now 22 years old. We've known each other our entire lives. Growing up, she was definitely the prettier one, and the boys definitely let us know that. She was the one getting asked out, always getting hit on, always being chased by boys, and I, on the other hand, barely got any attention from guys. I know that this created a huge problem for me, even though I never voiced it to her. I became insanely jealous every time she got a boyfriend, and worse, every time she went on a date. From the time we turned 15, she was basically going on a date every single weekend. Oh yeah, and she had the perfect parents too. They trusted her so much because she got really good grades in school, so they decided to buy her a car when she was 16. My parents, on the other hand, didn't trust me. I couldn't do anything by myself. They didn't give me a car actually ever. I bought my first car when I was 19. Her and I were also just very different people. She loved being around people. She was voted most likely to succeed, and she loved theater and she was always cast in the best parts. I was more of a shy girl. I didn't like talking to guys, and if anybody ever hit on me, I always assumed that it was just like a bet or that they were trying to play me. Mostly because why would they look at me when she's standing right next to me? Now, don't get me wrong. Her and I actually have a great relationship. She comes to me whenever she has boy trouble, and I try to give her my best advice. I was also very protective of her. Girls were always jealous of her and trying to do something, and I constantly had her back. She could always come to me whenever she had a problem, and I would always be there. During prom, a girl tried to ruin her dress, so I beat her up. That's the kind of friend I was. Even though, yes, I was jealous and sometimes envious. We went to the same community college, and this is when things got bad. She started dating a new guy, and I hated him. He manipulated her at every turn, and she could never see it, so I did what I had to do to break them up. Part 2 is up. I manipulated my best friend's boyfriend to break up with her. Am I a hater? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Here are all the reasons why I hated him. He was a good boyfriend. He loved her. He procured her. He was protective and sometimes even possessive, but in a good way. The kind of possessive that every girl wants her boyfriend to be. He wasn't jealous. He wasn't envious, and he always took care of her. No matter where he was always thinking about her. He would text her a good morning text, check up on her during the day, and call her after classes every day. At this time, her and I were both still living at home even though we were going to college. And her boyfriend would drive 45 minutes out of his way just to go drop off some ice cream if she had her period. He was tall, dark, and handsome. He was the boy every girl wanted in class. And her and I know this because once they started dating, 4 different girls came up to my best friend and told her how lucky she was to be with him because he didn't get with just any girl. He waited for the perfect girl to come around, and that was my bestie. But here's what I hate even more. I loved hanging out with him. They made me look forward to possibly meeting someone who would love me the same. He gave me hope that there were other men like him. One day, one of his best friends asked me out, and it was my lucky day. We went out to dinner and he kissed me. I actually fell in love with this guy. I had never gotten so much male attention before, but then he ghosted me. My anger began to poison me inside, and suddenly I knew I needed to break them up because if I wasn't going to be happy, neither could they. I started silencing her phone so that when he texted or called, she wouldn't answer. And this made him angry right away. I also planted a seed, the jealousy seed. I told her that a guy asked her out and she said yes. This made him even angrier. He didn't even bother to ask her if it was true. He just assumed that I was telling him the truth. After a couple of weeks, he stopped calling her. She started crying, and it made me happy, eventually leading to them breaking up. Am I terrible? Yes or yes?
I don't think I'll ever forget the time I met a guy and he wanted me to drop everything I had out here in LA and move to London with him. Get ready with me, story time! Just reflecting back on this incident just makes me laugh and wonder where life would be if I actually went. I used to work at a restaurant in Los Angeles. It was basically Beverly Hills. There was always a lot of rich people that went to this restaurant. It was either rich people that was at this restaurant, there were a lot of like artists or celebrities that went to this restaurant. So basically it was people with money who would come to this restaurant. Okay, let's count how many times I said restaurant because Ash BFFR. At this restaurant, I was a host, meaning I would greet and I would seat the customers. One day there was a group of guys that walked into the restaurant, and depending on what time I was scheduled, if I was working later at night, it would be 2 hosts, and if I was working during like the daytime, it would be 1 host. But this particular night when the group of guys walked in, there were 2 hosts, so I didn't seat them. My coworkers seated these men. I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty easy for me to get away with a lot at this restaurant, meaning I would just go to the back, I would chit chat with my coworkers, especially because there was one coworker who technically is a family friend, but in a way we're like cousins, but not really cousins because I'm family with his family, but like him and I aren't related. Does that make sense or no? I wasn't aware that these men were seated in the back. Oh, also at this restaurant, there was inside seating and there was also outside seating. My coworker, the other host, sat these men in the back patio, and whenever I would try to just disappear and get away from work a little bit, I would go to the back office, and that is where my friend, cousin, family member, whatever he was, this guy that I told you guys about earlier, that's where he was always at because he was always getting assigned the back patio area. He was a server, by the way. So as I mentioned, I go to the back office and that's where I see my family member, friend, whatever you want to call him, right? I like to just glance at the patio and see who's out there, see what people are doing. I told my cousin, friend, family member, whatever you want to call him again, let's just call him Matthew. That way we don't call him all these random ass names. Matthew was in the back and I remember I was like, ooh, who are these guys? And he was like, oh, these are actually my friends. I was like, of course you know these people because this man has been working at this restaurant for like 10 plus years. So it's pretty common for him to know regulars and for regulars to know him. He was like, Ash, do you want me to introduce you to them? And I was like, absolutely not. Matthew and I finished our conversation and he ended up going to, check up on his customers. I stayed in the office because, girl, I don't want to go back to go host yet. Tell me why. Matthew came back and he goes, hey, I told the guys about you. And I was like, of course you did. This is something that Matthew would do. And he was like, Ash, like, is there anyone in specific that you think is cute? And I was like, yeah. And then he was like, who? And I was like, the one right there. So I pointed at the guy and he was like, the one that's wearing white. And I was like, yes, him. We ended up hearing a customer call him. And at this restaurant, everyone was just so comfortable with each other, especially if you were a regular, they would just call the servers by their name and just shout. Like, nobody cared. It was such a vibe at this restaurant. And so I remember he went to this table and they asked for some more hookah. Matthew went to go help them out, get him more hookah, whatever, blah, blah. And then he comes back to me and he goes, hey, I went to that guy. And I was like, of course you did. This is why I don't tell you anything. I kid you guys not. 2 minutes later, I just hear someone knocking at the office door and it's the guy with the white shirt. And so at this point, what am I going to do or say? It was just so awkward for me. And I get really nervous when it comes to like meeting guys, you guys. Oh my goodness. Guy goes, hey, my name is, I don't even know what his name is at this point. We're gonna call him Jordan. So he goes, hey, my name is Jordan. I'm like, hi, my name is Ashley. He's like, how are you? I was like, good, how are you? When he first asked me what my name was, I heard an accent and I was like, oh, he's from the UK. He then asked me where I was from and I basically told him that I'm from the IE, but I recently moved to LA. And so then I followed up with the question and I asked him, I was like, I'm assuming you're from the UK with the accent. He was like, yes, I actually live in the UK. I just came to visit my brother out here in LA. And I was like, oh, how long are you staying? And he was like, well, I actually leave tomorrow. And I was like, oh, dang, that sucks. I then followed up with, I've always wanted to go to the UK. If you guys don't know, Ed Sheeran is my favorite artist and I've been wanting to go to the UK for as long as I can remember. So honestly, I was even surprised that that came out of my mouth. I don't know if me saying that was a green light in this man's head, but he proceeded to tell me, oh, well, how about I buy you a plane ticket and you come to London with me? And I was like, huh? I asked him, but when would we be leaving? Because you're telling me that you're leaving tomorrow. And he was like, yeah, exactly. After you clock out, just pack your things and we can go to London tomorrow. And I was like, easy for you to say. I remember telling this man how he didn't even know me and he already just wanted to, take me to London with him. He was like, but how do you know if you trust me? And he was like, well, you're, family friends with Matthew, so I trust you. And I was like, this man. I ended up telling this man how we should just change contact information and depending how our conversations go, think about going to London with him. If you can't tell, I'm at home in the IE. I didn't go to London with him. We did have conversations through text and honestly, I just got this weird vibe because there were certain questions that he wasn't answering, so I kind of was like, okay, what does this guy even do in London, because he doesn't want to say it. And I feel like he did something illegally, like that he had a phone and it would literally be green text messages. I was like, okay, I don't know if people from London have androids or whatever the case is, but I'm about to risk my life for someone I just met 24 hours ago. It's so crazy because I know some girls that will literally drop everything and just go to London or go to whatever state with a man, but I am just not that girl. I'm really not that girl. So we still here. We still working our ass off until a man decided to come into my life and make me stay home. I'm just kidding.